Hello, welcome back. Recently we did an experiment where we compared the finish of Liquitex iridescent medium compared to mica powder, and in the results we saw that the mica powder didn't blend well with the paint. I was going to leave the experiment there, but we had some helpful commenters and they pointed out that perhaps we could mix the mica powder with water or with an alcohol to get them to dissolve and emulsify better before adding them into our paints. So that's what we're going to do here. I have 3 colors. We're going to be mixing each color with white paint because the goal of this is to see, first, can we blend the mica powder better? Can we get the mica powder to emulsify and blend up and disperse better? The second step is then going to be to see how it combines with the paint and how it looks on the canvas when it's dry. Because the goal of our original iridescent experiment was to see how the iridescence factor came in. So if we have these 3 colors of mica powder and just a 4th plain white paint on a plain white canvas, if we have these, then we'll get to see truly how the mica powder shines, so to speak, both literally and figuratively how it shines. Let's get started. We have some isopropyl alcohol here. I want to add just the tiniest little bit because I've also done experiments and too much alcohol is game over for our paint. I'm going to add just a tiny little bit. Barely even visible here. And then with the end of just any old plain wooden stick, I can add a bit here into the mix. I'm going to go a little heavy on the mica powder, and we're going to blend it up until it is blended. Okay. That did blend pretty well, and I can see how this would mix into paint pretty easily. So there's a mica powder plus rubbing alcohol. And then we have the blue. Take this blue here. Get a nice little saturation in the cup, and we're going to try our water. So let's go ahead and try gold. You know what we'll do? We'll do 50-50. Here's what we're going to do with the gold. We're going to add just a little bit of the rubbing alcohol. So then we're going to finish that off with just a little drop of water. Normally when I mix my paints, if you've seen my videos, normally when I mix my paints, it's paint, and then Floetrol, and then a mixture of Floetrol and water, and I mix these 3 categories together equally. What I didn't do is add the 3rd step of Floetrol plus water, so this is just paint, just Floetrol, and now as we add the colors into these, that should give us the last little bit to our recipe that would normally be achieved by adding Floetrol and water. Instead, it's going to be glitter and solvent. You can see right now the gold, just as it hit the surface, the alcohol component of it is feathering out as it disintegrates the acrylic bonds. That's just kind of how it goes. I was expecting that from prior experience with it, but we can still see how it turns out if the paint can hold up, and if not, we might get some really cool feathery effects, so there's no reason to panic just yet. I'm going to blend this in real good. At the end of the day, paint is paint, pigment is pigment, and powder is powder. So let's scoot everything off to the side, get our bottles closed, and let's see just how well this comes out. Okay, it might not look like much right now, but that's to be expected. We used plain white colors and the mica powder. You would have to use a ton of this stuff to get the colors consistent enough, even at a small scale like this, to be overpowering or completely visual at this stage. So we're going to see when this is all done how the iridescent came out. I'm not seeing the same feathering from our iridescent test, which means that the methods we use to thin out the paint does seem to be effective for this style. One thing, we mixed our green with rubbing alcohol, and it's got a very clumpy, kind of batter consistency still. It didn't blend as well once the alcohol hit. It did start to chunk up our white. The blue that we mixed with water has a more honey-like consistency, which is what I typically go for. It's a little thinner and smoother, no clumping, as well as the gold paint also is, well, pretty much exactly in between those two. So I would recommend mixing with water or mixing with alcohol and then toning it down with water if you want to try this at home. Alcohol by itself, I use 70% isopropyl alcohol. It doesn't seem like it had a negative effect on the painting as a whole, but it's not in line with my usual consistency preferences. I'll see you when this is dry. Alright, let's take a second look at our pour with mica powder. So, it's honestly not that shiny. Not a whole lot of natural iridescence to it. You can see as I'm tilting it, there's barely any reflection. There's a wet spot here. I don't know if that's silicone or just a glob of paint, so I'm not going to touch it. But I have 2 points of observation. One, I'm not seeing the same little warts that I did in the original mica powder test, which means that thinning it out with water and alcohol was successful. So you can try this at home, and if you want, you can use a much larger amount of mica powder. And the more mica powder you have, the more mica pigment is in the paints, and the more the iridescence will shine through. So it is possible to get a shine. I think we just didn't use enough for the paint. But that's going to be up to you on if the expense of the amount of mica powder that you will need to produce a nice shine, it's up to you if that expense is worth it. I would, again, still rather just use an iridescent paint like a metallic. The other thing we noticed is that it still worked in a pour painting style. Using the water and the alcohol, neither seemed to affect the paint in a negative way. It may be a little hard to see with the very muted tones here, but we still have cells. We still have the layers of paint that move across the canvas exactly like we're used to. Everything here to me looks familiar and looks similar to what I've done with pour painting previously. So this is very much a viable option to thin the paints down with mica powder. So I appreciate those comments, y'all, for watching and letting me know. I also want to take a look at some of the skins that we poured out. I was trying to see, I had a suspicion that maybe the mica powder, maybe the mica was so dense that it sank to the bottom, and then the bottom of the skin would be very shiny and iridescent, and that's not very much the case. It's a little reflective, but it's not iridescent or shiny particularly. So it looks like you just need a ton of mica powder, water or alcohol, and you can get yourself a nice shiny paint. This has been our demonstration. Thanks again for watching, commenting, subscribing, all of it. I love it. I love you guys for watching. I hope you're getting your time's worth. This has been Souffle Art.